Right, the next one, probably the worst answered question in this rivers test. Feature Z, labelled on the photograph above is a floodplain. Explain the formation of a floodplain. Right then, hopefully this really identifies to you the importance of revision. If you do not revise for a test on rivers or coast and you get a landform question, it is very unlikely you can make your way up through this question. You need to literally know how all of your landforms for rivers and coasts are formed. So, first thing I want you to do, obviously, to highlight the key words of the question. This one's relatively straightforward.
So let's get into breaking down what this question is asking us. I can see the animations appear to have failed me on this slide as they've already appeared, but okay then. Feature Z, label on the photograph above, is a floodplain. Look, the exam board's really trying to help you with this. It's literally telling you, look, this is a floodplain, and it tells you it's feature Z. So all you've got to do is find feature Z and realise that all of this, that wasn't a particularly good straight line, all of that is the floodplain. It's not interested in the meander as such here, although maybe we will mention that. It's interested in that feature, that flat land adjacent or next to the river in the lower course, and that's the floodplain. So, question itself, explain, so it's the so what rule. Formation, come back to that one in a second, of a floodplain. So, formation, when you see a formation question, it changes the way you normally answer the question that you'd normally be doing. So, for a 4-mark question, you will be told by me or whoever your teacher is, it's 2 arguments with some so whats on a 4-mark question. However, on this question, it doesn't work like that. Because it's a formation question, it needs you to tell the story of the landform in this case, from beginning to end. So you start at the earliest point where this landform begins to form, and you go through the entire sequence until you get to the end with the floodplain being formed. There was another one of these questions in the exam. There was also the waterfalls question as well. Now this question, as I've previously mentioned, was not particularly well answered. We definitely need a recap video over this one. So 4-mark question, it is still 2 marks and 2 marks. However, in this case, it isn't 2 separate arguments required, as I've said. It is 2 marks for AO1, knowledge and understanding, and 2 for the application. So if you just read that top, I've put the actual mark scheme on here, level 2 clear. What we've got there is accurate knowledge about transport, deposition and floodplain formation for your knowledge and understanding, so how it works. And the AO2 is the application of that. It's how well you've explained how those processes link together. So we'll have a little look at a model answer now. Here is model answer. This would be 4 out of 4 all day long. Floodplains are formed due to deposition. Remember, deposition is the dropping of materials, the river's load in times of flood in the lower course of a river. Now, this is where we're showing our application. We're showing that we know a floodplain is formed by deposition, and we are applying our knowledge to say that it actually occurs in the lower course. And we've got the reason why here. The lower course is flatter because of the meandering river eroding the land away. So if we have a little look at the diagram a second, if I just draw some red highlighted marks on it here, you'll notice that this area is, all of it, this area is very flat. And the reason for that is, if you imagine where the river used to be, the river would have formerly gone in a sequence like that perhaps, or even gone over like this in the past, and potentially even if I change colour to a darker blue, it's possibly at some stage done this. And as a result of all of those different meanders over time, it means that the land that was there has been eroded and been transported away. And that therefore makes the land very, very flat in the lower course. As a result of the land being very flat in the lower course, what this means is we are more likely to have a flood in the lower course because, well, firstly, the land is very flat, but secondly, the rivers will have a high discharge. Now remember, discharge just simply means the amount of water in the river. And the reason why there'll be lots of water in the river is all the tributaries would have joined and added more water to the river. So if we I'll just put a little mark on my answer a second just to make sure we're up to speed, just stopping there for a moment. What we've explained to the examiner so far is we know that this is in the lower course, which obviously the photo helps you with because you can see the sea in the photo. We know the lower course is flat, and we know that the river has a lot of water in it in the lower course. Now that's a lot of knowledge that you need to be able to answer this question at the top level, and it just absolutely hammers home the importance of revising before these tests, because if you haven't looked at that prior to going into this test, it's going to be a very, very difficult question. So some more specifics, the river is also going to be heavy with suspended sediment. That's sediment that the river is carrying due to previous erosion through the river course. So now we've got a lot of water in the river, we've got a lot of sediment being carried in the river, and we've got very flat land either side of the river. When a river bursts its banks, the water is slowed by friction on the grassy bank. So what we have either side of the river is some grass. So picture the water burst out of the river and then smashes into that grass. That is going to slow it down compared to the relatively smooth channel. As a result of the water being slowed down, the heaviest load, things like boulders and stones, are going to be dropped first, and that's called a levee. So levees run either side of the river in the lower course. However, the bit that we're getting to, which actually is why on the diagram itself, the floodplain stretches all the way across this area, is that the lighter material, such as silt and sand, is carried further away. And the reason for that is because the water can still carry that material. Yes, it's being slowed down by friction on the grass, but it still has the ability to hold that material up, whereas it can't hold the boulders up when it's slowed down. That means that material, silt and sand, that used to be in the river, remember, is now deposited by the floodwater further away. So look, we've got silt and sand being carried further away before being deposited. So if I take a little purple X a second, and we can literally cross on, I'll put it right over there for a minute, you can imagine that sand and silt is carried that far away from the river. Okay, whereas your boulders wouldn't be carried that far away. A boulder, if I just put in black a second, the boulder would be much, much, much closer to the river when that's dropped. Each time the river floods, because it's not just going to be one flood event, it's going to be at least annually, but probably even more than that, it builds up these layers of material. So more sand and silt keep getting deposited, and that therefore builds up this area of flat land either side of the river. Okay. Just last little point, just pointing out, look, we've pointed out that it's in the photograph as well, just to show the examiner we are using the photograph, even though actually if you read the question again, it doesn't actually say you have to do so. So floodplain's really quite a complicated feature to explain, because you have to have so much wider knowledge to be able to explain how on earth you get this flat land next to the river that's being built up each time. It really, really hammers home that importance, like I've said in this video already, of revising carefully. So in terms of your purple pen for this, the best thing you could do for the purple pen on this question is to read back over your answer, look at my model answer, and where you need to add those annotations. There are going to be some of you who my advice would be, honestly, take this model answer and put it directly onto your exam paper, because this question was a really, really tough one, and it is a bit of an exam board favourite. They like waterfalls, they like meanders, and they like floodplains. Any questions, come and see us down in H7. If you're in the computer room, obviously just stick your hand up and ask.